Nobody in that room thought this would turn into a moment people would talk about for years. There were no cameras ready, no crowd screaming, no announcer hyping it up. Just a quiet training space filled with experienced fighters who believed they had seen everything. Bruce Lee stood near the center, calm and observant, scanning the room the way only a master does, not looking for weakness, but for truth. That's when his eyes stopped. Across the room stood a man who didn't speak, didn't show off, didn't stretch dramatically like the others. He simply watched. Jason Statham. To most people, he looked like another disciplined trainee. Athletic, yes, but nothing loud enough to demand attention. Bruce tilted his head slightly. Something felt different. Not arrogance, not fear. Bruce stepped forward. The room didn't react at first, but instinctively conversation slowed. Then Bruce spoke quietly, almost casually. "You train differently." The sentence landed heavier than it sounded. Jason looked up. No smile, no challenge, just eye contact. Bruce continued, his voice steady. "People who move like you usually hide something." A few fighters exchanged glances. This wasn't an insult, it was an invitation. A dangerous one. Jason didn't answer right away. He simply nodded once. That nod changed the air in the room. Bruce smiled, not confidently, but curiously, and then he said the words that froze everyone. "Let's test it." For a brief second, nobody moved. Not because of fear, but because something unspoken had just happened. Bruce Lee had just issued a challenge. Without knowing, the man standing in front of him was a 6-time world karate champion, and the next moments would reveal a truth neither of them expected. The room didn't explode after the challenge. It tightened. That's how real fighters react, not with noise, but with awareness. A few men shifted their stance. Others stopped stretching altogether. Even the air felt heavier, like it had been warned to stay quiet. Jason Statham didn't step forward. He didn't step back either. He remained exactly where he was. That alone told Bruce Lee something important. Most people rush when they're nervous, or hesitate when they're unsure. Jason did neither. Bruce circled slowly, not threatening, observing. His footwork was light, almost playful, but his eyes were locked on Jason's center mass. Jason noticed immediately. Not Bruce's speed, not his reputation, but his balance. Jason adjusted his stance by a few inches. A subtle shift, barely visible. Bruce caught it. That adjustment wasn't defensive, it was calculated. Someone near the wall whispered, "He's not new." Another voice answered quietly, "No, he's trained." Bruce stopped moving. "You've been in real matches," Bruce said. Jason finally spoke.
"Yes."
One word. Nothing else. No explanation, no bragging. Bruce smiled again, but this time, the smile didn't reach his eyes. The fighters watching felt it too. This wasn't going to be a demonstration. This was going to be a reading. Bruce raised his hands slightly, not in full stance, just enough to signal readiness. Jason mirrored him, not copying, matching. Their distance closed by inches. Nobody spoke. Someone reached for their phone, then thought better of it. Bruce tested the space with a light forward step. Not an attack, a probe. Jason responded instantly, not by retreating, by angling. That angle told the story. Bruce paused. He had expected speed. What he hadn't expected was patience. "Interesting," Bruce said quietly. Jason didn't answer. His breathing was controlled, too controlled. Bruce suddenly realized something uncomfortable. This man wasn't reacting to Bruce Lee. He was reacting to movement. Titles meant nothing here. Reputation meant nothing. Only timing. Bruce shifted his weight again, faster this time. Jason didn't flinch. That's when the room fully understood day. Jason wasn't waiting to see what Bruce would do. He already knew. Bruce straightened slightly. For the first time since stepping forward, he slowed himself down, not out of caution, but respect. "You don't fight emotionally," Bruce said. Jason replied calmly, "Emotion wastes energy." That answer landed hard. Several fighters exchanged looks. This wasn't actor talk. This was competition thinking. Bruce nodded once, then asked the question that changed everything. "How many championships?" Jason hesitated, not because he didn't want to answer, but because it didn't matter. "6, he said finally. Silence. Someone exhaled sharply. Bruce didn't react outwardly. But internally, the equation had changed. This wasn't about testing a stranger anymore. This was about understanding a peer. Bruce lowered his hands slightly. Not surrender, acknowledgement. If you've ever misjudged someone because they were quiet, you already know where this is going. Comment voice.Us if you believe real skill doesn't need noise. And stay, because what happens next isn't about who wins. It's about who adapts. Nobody announced the start. There was no signal, no referee, no countdown. The moment simply arrived. Bruce Lee shifted his weight, just slightly, enough to test space without committing. It was the kind of movement most people would miss. Jason didn't. His eyes dropped for a fraction of a second, not to Bruce's feet, but to the rhythm of his breathing. That told him everything. Bruce stepped in, not fast, not precise. Jason rotated his torso by inches, letting Bruce pass just close enough to feel resistance in the air. No contact, no clash. But the room reacted anyway. A ripple of tension spread through the onlookers, because this wasn't sparring. This was measurement. Bruce turned instantly, testing again, this time with a sharper entry, a half feint designed to draw reaction. Jason responded without thought. Not blottering. He repositioned. That was the first red flag. Most fighters respond to threat. Jason responded to probability. Bruce's eyes narrowed. He wasn't frustrated. He was intrigued. Bruce suddenly increased tempo. 3 quick shifts in succession, footwork flowing like water, angles changing faster than the eye could comfortably track. Anyone else would have backed up. Jason didn't. He stayed planted, not stiff, rooted. Like someone who trusted his base more than speed. Bruce stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was louder than any strike. "You're reading before I act," Bruce said quietly. Jason answered without arrogance. "You telegraph less than most," he said, "but not nothing." That landed. Bruce smiled, this time fully. He raised his guard higher now. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was engagement. Bruce initiated the first true exchange. A lightning, fast hand movement, meant to tag, not damage. Jason reacted instantly. He didn't swat the hand away, he redirected it. Barely. Just enough to change the line. Bruce felt it. Not the force, the intent. Bruce reset, breathing deeper now. Jason mirrored him again. Not copying. Synchronizing. That's when Bruce realized something unsettling. Jason wasn't trying to win moments. He was conserving them. Bruce pressed again, this time with layered movement. Feint high, shift low. Step off center. Jason adjusted with terrifying economy. No wasted motion, no flare. Just answers, the observers could feel it. This wasn't dominance, it was parity. Bruce backed away half a step. Not retreat. Recalibration. He studied Jason's posture again. The relaxed shoulders. The quiet hands. The eyes that never blinked too long. This wasn't someone trained for demonstration. This was someone trained for outcomes. Bruce changed strategy. He slowed everything down. Dropped his rhythm deliberately. Jason noticed and slowed too. Now they were moving at the same tempo, breathing matched, distance measured. Bruce tested with a low step in. Jason angled. Bruce tested high. Jason rotated. Still no contact. Still no mistake. That's when Bruce felt it. Not danger. Respect. Real respect. The kind that doesn't flatter you, it checks you. Bruce lowered his hands slightly. But because he was done, but because he was thinking, Jason stayed ready. Not advancing, not relaxing, waiting. Bruce spoke, just loud enough for Jason to hear. "You don't chase openings." Jason replied. "Openings appear when someone wants to win too badly." That sentence hung in the air. Bruce exhaled slowly. The room exhaled with him. Everyone understood now. If this continued, someone would eventually make a mistake. And neither of these men rushed mistakes. If you're still watching, you already know. This isn't about who's stronger. It's about who breaks rhythm first. Comment Conrel if you believe patience beats aggression. And don't blink. Because the next moment changes how Bruce sees this fight. Bruce raised his hands again, higher this time, not playful. Not testing, serious. Jason adjusted his stance by 1 inch. That inch said everything. The real exchange had just begun. Bruce Lee didn't move right away. That alone surprised everyone. Moments earlier, he had been fluid, exploratory, constantly testing. Now he stood still, hands raised, eyes steady, breathing measured. Jason Statham noticed immediately. Stillness from a fighter like Bruce wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. Bruce wasn't looking at Jason's hands anymore. Or his feet. He was watching the space between them, the invisible line where decisions are made. Bruce took a slow breath and let it out through his nose. In his mind, something had shifted. This wasn't a man reacting to pressure. This was a man comfortable inside it. Bruce replayed the last few exchanges silently. The redirections, the angles, the way Jason never overcommitted. No wasted motion, no emotional spikes. Bruce had seen that before, not often, but enough to recognize the pattern. This wasn't tournament bravado. This wasn't street chaos. This was championship discipline. Bruce lowered his center of gravity slightly, not to attack, but to feel grounded again. Jason mirrored the change again. Not copying. Reading. Bruce smiled faintly, but this time there was no playfulness in it. "You fought people faster than me," Bruce said quietly. Jason didn't answer immediately. Because it wasn't a compliment, it was a test.
Yes.
Jason replied at last. And stronger.
Less.
And angrier. Jason paused.
Yes.
That pause mattered.
Bruce tilted his head. And they all made the same mistake, Bruce continued. They wanted to prove something. Jason met his eyes.
Yes.
The room felt like it was holding its breath. Bruce straightened a little. That was it, the missing piece. This man wasn't here to prove anything. Bruce had spent years teaching that exact principle, that ego clouds timing, that anger leaks information. And here it was, standing in front of him. Practiced, refined. Bruce took a half step back, not retreating but widening perspective. He began to see Jason not as an opponent but as a mirror. Different style, different path, same destination. Bruce lowered his hand slightly, not enough to be careless. Just enough to signal thought. You train for efficiency, Bruce said. Jason nodded. Efficiency survives. That sentence landed deeper than Jason probably intended. Bruce felt it in his chest. He remembered the fighters who burned bright and disappeared. The ones who chased dominance instead of mastery. Jason wasn't chasing anything. He was conserving. Bruce looked around briefly. The observers were silent now, not excited, not nervous. Respectful. They weren't waiting for impact anymore. They were witnessing something rarer. Understanding. Bruce turned his focus back. You didn't answer earlier, Bruce said. Why you train? Jason considered the question. Not long. Because chaos doesn't care who you are, he said. Only what you can do when it arrives. Bruce exhaled slowly. That was it, that was the line. Bruce had spent his life preparing people for unpredictability. And here stood someone who had already made peace with it. Bruce raised his hands again, but differently this time. Looser, more open, not inviting a strike, inviting exchange. The energy shifted instantly. Jason felt it. This wasn't escalation. This was alignment. Bruce stepped forward, not aggressively, not defensively. Deliberately. Jason didn't angle away. He held his ground. Two fighters. Same distance. Same calm. Bruce spoke again. This isn't about winning anymore, he said. Jason nodded once.
No.
He agreed. It isn't. The room understood. If this continued, it wouldn't end in dominance. It would end in revelation. Bruce smiled, genuine now. Then let's learn, he said. Jason returned the smile, small, respectful. The tension didn't vanish, but it transformed from threat to purpose. If you've ever realized mid-challenge that the real battle was inside your own head, you know this moment. Calm and awareness if you believe growth starts with reassessment, because what happens next isn't a clash, it's a decision. Bruce adjusted his stance one final time. Jason did not mirror it. He didn't need to. They were already aligned. And in that silence, Bruce Lee made a choice that redefined the entire encounter. Bruce Lee held his stance, but something had changed. Not in his posture, in his intention. Jason Statham could feel it too. The tension between them wasn't sharp anymore. It was focused. Like a blade still in its sheath. Bruce took one more breath and relaxed his shoulders slightly. That single movement spoke louder than any strike. He wasn't disengaging. He was deciding. Bruce had always believed that the highest level of combat wasn't about domination. It was about clarity. About knowing when to act and, more importantly, when not to. He looked at Jason again. Not as a challenger, not as a test, but as someone who had already passed. You could push this further, Bruce said calmly. Jason didn't deny it.
Yes.
And so could I. Again, no denial.
Yes.
That mutual honesty locked the room into silence. Bruce continued, his voice steady. But the next step wouldn't teach us much. Jason understood immediately. The next step would be about ego, about proving something to the people watching, not to themselves. Jason lowered his hands, slowly, deliberately. Not surrender, consent. Bruce mirrored the motion. Two fighters choosing restraint at the same time. That's when the room finally exhaled. Bruce stepped closer, not into range, but into conversation distance. You don't fight to be seen, Bruce said. Jason replied, neither do you. Bruce smiled. That's why this ends here. Not because of fear, because of wisdom. Bruce turned slightly toward the others in the room. Most fights happen because someone wants an answer, he said, and doesn't want to wait for it. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Bruce turned back to Jason. You already gave me mine. Jason nodded. So did you. There was no applause, no disappointment. Only something heavier, respect. Bruce extended his hand. Jason accepted it without hesitation. The grip wasn't a test of strength. It was acknowledgement, the kind that doesn't need witnesses. Bruce spoke one last time, quietly. If we continued, one of us would eventually win a moment? Jason answered. But both of us might lose the lesson. Bruce released his hand. That settled it. The encounter was over. Not unresolved, completed. Around them, the fighters slowly returned to motion, stretching, murmuring, breathing again. But something had changed. They had just seen two men at the highest level choose mastery over spectacle. Bruce walked a few steps away, then paused. Without turning back, he said, "Train with me tomorrow." Jason didn't hesitate. "I will." That was it. No contracts, no challenges, no conditions, just intent. As they separated, someone whispered, "So who won?" Bruce heard it. He stopped and answered without looking back. No one who mattered. Jason smiled at that, because he knew that was the only correct answer. Bruce left the floor calm. Jason stayed behind for a moment, absorbing the silence. Too understanding. And a lesson few people ever learn. Real power isn't shown, it's controlled. The room felt different after they separated. Not quieter, clearer. People moved again, but more slowly, as if they didn't want to disturb whatever had just settled in the air. Bruce Lee gathered his things without ceremony. No final speech. No announcement. He didn't need to explain what had happened. The ones who understood already knew. Jason Statham stayed where he was for a moment, hands on his hips, breathing steady. He wasn't replaying movements. He wasn't imagining outcomes. He was processing meaning. Most fighters leave an encounter asking, "Did I win?" Jason asked something else. What did that reveal? Bruce paused at the doorway and glanced back, not dramatically, just briefly. Their eyes met again. No nod, no smile. That had already been exchanged. Outside the room, Bruce walked alone. His steps were light, unhurried. The night air cooled his thoughts. He had spent his life challenging limits, physical, mental, cultural. But moments like this reminded him why. Because mastery wasn't about being unbeatable. It was about being unprovocable. Back inside, the fighters finally began to talk, quietly at first. "Did you see how little they moved? And never chased. He never flinched." One man shook his head. "That wasn't sparring," he said. "That was philosophy." Jason overheard it and smiled faintly. He packed his gear slowly, deliberately, like someone closing a chapter rather than ending a session. The next morning they trained. No narrative, just work. Bruce showed angles, Jason showed structure. Bruce tested adaptability. Jason tested patience. They didn't try to impress each other. They tried to refine. Hours passed without notice. When they finally stopped, Bruce sat down, sweat cooling on his skin. "You know what most people misunderstand?" Bruce said. Jason waited. "They think strength is the ability to finish a fight," Bruce continued. "But real strength is knowing exactly how far you could go and choosing not to." Jason nodded. "That's why chaos loses," he said. "It can't stand against discipline." Bruce smiled. Years later, people would tell versions of this story. Some would exaggerate it. Some would add blows that never happened. Some would insist someone must have won. They always do. Because silence makes people uncomfortable. But the truth stayed simpler. Two masters met. They tested understanding. And they walked away better. No footage went viral. No headline captured it. Yet the lesson outlived the moment. Bruce would later say something similar in different words. The highest level of combat is avoiding it. And Jason carried the same belief forward, into training, into life, into every moment where ego tried to speak first. Because what they shared that day wasn't a fight. It was a reminder that the strongest people in any room are rarely the loudest. They are the calmest, the ones who don't need to win because they already understand. If this story made you pause, even for a second, save it. Because lessons like this aren't meant to be watched once. And comment "Dice Plan" if you believe real power is quiet. One last question. When was the last time you chose control over ego? Stories like this don't end when the room empties. They follow people. Days later, the fighters who witnessed that moment found themselves replaying it. Not the movements, not the footwork, but the restraint. One man admitted something quietly while wrapping his hands before training. "I would have swung." Another nodded. "So would I?" That realization lingered longer than any bruise. Because what Bruce Lee and Jason Statham showed that day wasn't superiority. It was choice. The choice to pause. The choice to read instead of react. The choice to let ego starve. Most people never realize how loud their inner voice is until they see someone silence theirs. Bruce never spoke publicly about the encounter. Not because it wasn't important, but because lessons don't need promotion. Jason didn't either. He carried it forward in subtler ways. In how he trained, in how he walked into rooms, in how he listened longer than he spoke. People around him noticed. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. Calm changes rooms. Years passed. The world got louder. Everyone wanted to win arguments, dominate conversations, prove something to someone who didn't even matter. But that moment, that quiet decision, kept resurfacing in the minds of those who saw it. Because deep down, everyone knows, most damage in life doesn't come from fists. It comes from reactions. Bruce once said that water doesn't fight the rock, it outlasts it. That day, he lived it. Jason learned the same truth from a different path. Different backgrounds, different styles, same conclusion. That control isn't weakness, it's freedom. Freedom from impulse. Freedom from regret. Freedom from needing approval. And that's what unsettled people the most. Not that no one won, but that no one needed to. If you're watching this and something feels familiar, it's because you've been there. A moment where you could have snapped. A moment where ego begged for control. A moment where silence felt harder than noise. Most people don't pause. They react and spend years explaining why. But a few, a rare few, choose restraint. And those people quietly shape outcomes without ever raising their voice. This story isn't about Bruce Lee. It isn't about Jason Statham. It's about you. The next time someone disrespects you. The next time you're underestimated. The next time you feel the urge to prove something. Ask yourself, do I want to win this moment or master it? Because real strength doesn't announce itself. It shows up calm, it leaves quietly, and it lets others argue about who won. If this story made you think differently, even slightly, save it, because you'll need it again. And comment /All if you believe the strongest response is sometimes no response at all. One last question, answer honestly. Would you have reacted? Or would you have paused?